to Strixhaven College, and this is the MMcast 101 with your professors, Alex Kessler and Mr. Benjamin Bateman. We're like a flip
What's up,
card.
guys? How y'all doing?
I'm good. And our listeners are hopefully good because we're in school, which generally means I'm not going to class, and I'm out there breaking rules of some variety based on my college experiences. Today, we're doing our whole review of content. I have 30 or so cards. We'll see how many we get through. Some of them we'll skip over. We've gone through. We're going to save also specifically the learn mechanic for next week. We'll do a whole episode on both lesson cards and the learn mechanic in general. Maybe we'll touch upon one or two as we go through it if they are cards that have effects that the learn effect is more about the looting than necessarily what it has to do with the sideboard, or if it's not relevant. But in general, the plan is to not touch upon learn cards. This is meant specifically for modern, so this will be a modern focused review. This will be the MMcast Modern, the Masters of Modern review of Strixhaven. So Ben, I know you're like aching to talk about these cards' relevance in Commander and Standard and Vintage.
I mean, you're kidding, except that when we do these reviews, I always do the thing where I start talking about Commander, and then you're like, we're not talking about Commander, man. Chill out.
I know.
They're like, you have to tell me to not talk about Commander.
I have to reel you in. I got to reel you in. As we get into this, now that the full set is revealed. So right now they're still revealing the Commander product stuff, which we're not touching upon, though there's some bangers there. Storm is back. The fact that the Storm is more likely to be printed into Historic than Lightning Bolt is a fascinating thing that I hate. I want Lightning Bolt into Historic so bad. First question before we get into details, Ben, how do you feel? How do you feel about Strixhaven? What are you happy, sad?
I like the design. I like the vibe. I think it's cool. I like what they did with it. I think they were quite successful in designing the 5 schools. I especially like the Lorehold stuff. I think we talked about that a bit last week. I think that they did a very good job with the Lorehold stuff. You got a Lorehold jacket? How'd that happen?
I have a hoodie, a jacket, and a t-shirt because I went in online and bought it because I did not get any scarves sent to me in the mail. So I didn't get like a scholarship to go. So I'm paying full tuition.
Paying the full tuition. I like it. Yeah, I think Lorehold's really cool. We've talked about some stuff in past episodes already. You know, the commands. There's a lot of stuff in there. They're doing more with flip cards. I haven't been able to pour over every single card. I've been watching the spoilers as they've happened, and I've seen a lot of them, and we've broken some down. But I think the set looks pretty successful. What's interesting about this set is that this is going to be the final paper released set. I believe by the time the next paper set comes out, I believe I'll be playing in-person Magic and drafting, probably at a store. If not at a store at that point, but I think we're going to just be reopened in California by the time the next set comes out. If this is coming out in April, the next set's going to come out in like July or something.
Modern Horizons 2, which we will be doing an episode in the future on like what we think is going to be in that set, predictions that's coming up. But in I think 2 weeks is when I want to do that episode. That might be released on the line. Like it might be released after California is open, but it might be weird, right? It might be before their total in-store play is open. But by the Forgotten Realms, which is the core set replacement that's going to be set in the D&D world, that probably will have in-store pre-releases available at a limited level.
Yeah, and so I think that's the big thing I take away from this is that, you know, this last year, in a lot of ways, I don't own any physical cards that have been released in the last year. I didn't buy any of them. I just didn't. I mean, how I accumulate my cards is I buy them when I need them for like tournaments that I have sanctioned, or I draft them. And I didn't have any way to do either of those things. So I just didn't feel the need to buy any cards. So I have a weird detachment from the last year of products, even though there's a lot of really cool ones. Mm-hmm. And so I'm excited about this set. I wish that this set was coming out 3 months from now, because I really like this set and I would be fun. But we're also going to be, we're in April, and the whole entire California is eligible for vaccines by May. We collectively were able to get them just like now, basically. So, we basically both are covered now by that. And it means that once that kicks in and we're actually safe to see each other, we'll be able to play Magic in May. Yeah. So probably I'll play this with you. I'll probably play this set of Magic cards with you.
I might buy a few pre-release packs
awesome.
just to have and like do a future pre-release in eventually. I also definitely bought a Japanese box because I want the cool Japanese
all
promos
of
from
those
the set.
sweet cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I think those are my general feelings on it. As I know, I mean, there's a real one of the things that I think I'm the most excited about is there's a legitimate year and a half of physical Magic cards that because I didn't see them or open the product. When I go to GPs and stuff in the future, I'm gonna go to like dealers tables and I'm gonna see all these cards I've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
It's all gonna look exciting and new and fresh to me. And also when we do like our chaos drafts and stuff where we go buy new packs, it's not gonna be like packs that I open and remember playing standard or like playing draft with.
Right.
It's gonna be a lot of packs I've never opened before in these chaos drafts that are gonna be cheap and available.
Yep.
They'll just be for sale.
Yeah. It like opens up a cool new spin versus like, oh, I know this format. It's like, oh no, this is like opening legions. I've never played that format. What are these cards?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that aspect of it's really cool. But the set itself, I'm pretty happy with. I'm down to just jump in and start going card by card.
Yeah. So before I do that, one last thing. Which now that you've seen the whole set, are you still on the Silver Quill train? Which college do you feel like you're attending?
I feel less attached to Silver Quill now than I did. I think Silver Quill's cool, but I think I'm Blue Red's Prismari, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, I think I'm Prismari.
Yeah,
that feels pretty right on.
You're a musician. You just released a song, which by the way, everyone should go download. It's on every music device. That was a subtle plug for your new song.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You should say what it's called and tell people where they can find it.
It is called Sorry for Tonight. My name is Ben Bateman. If you guys search me on Spotify or Apple or Amazon or anywhere, you'll find it. It's streaming, and there's a lyric video you can find on youtube.com/nerdsandssuits. And yeah, I've been playing it a whole bunch. So, yeah.
And so Prismari makes sense. It's also blue red, which is your color vibe in general. And that's kind of one of the first conversations I want to have before we get into individual cards. And part of it is going to be going over each of the dragons because I want to start there. Some of these aren't really going to be modern playable, but more kind of a conversation on like how this was the big deal Wizards was focusing on was we want each of these sets to feel different than their Ravnica counterparts, right? Like, and Lorehold is like the most obvious of those because Boros is such we are the aggressive attacking tribe. We are here to get into your face and we're the police army. And Lorehold's like graveyard control, slow grindy, rebuying mechanics, artifacts are cool. Like it's just playing in a totally different space. And kind of each of the different tribes tried that. I think right now the biggest complaint on the street is that Quandrix feels the most like Simic, right? It's the least different with Prismari being relatively close behind that. I think, and this is something that'll be interesting once we get to the pre-release, I think that I think the blue-green and the red-blue tribe will feel much different in gameplay.
I think it's because blue by nature is a color that is very difficult to push in directions other than the things people like blue to do and have it still feel good to play as a blue player. That's, I think, the biggest reason. It's easier to push red in other directions. It's easier to push green in other directions. It's very hard to get people away from if you have a 2-mana blue spell that includes either the color green or red, people not wanting it to just like have the ability to somehow counter things or things that cost 1 or 2 in blue, just like drawing cards or scrying. Mm-hmm. Like those are things that if you're going to play as a blue player, you almost feel like you're owed that by the game or something. Cause like you think about some of the other things blue has done over the years and they've pushed it a lot. Like the magical hack abilities, like where you change a color or a text or a word type or something. They did those for years and years and years. They made cards like that. And those abilities just like, they weren't very fun. It kind of sucked. Like, and they tried to double down on that. Blue has bounced things for years. If it's an instant that bounces something, like it feels like something blue does. So it's just, I think it's hard to find design space that the players that like to play instant speed blue spells feel happy with, and not just like they're playing weak versions of other colors. That's why I think it's difficult for them to design blue red and blue green cards that feel unique.
I think that's fair. I think there's maybe there's an argument for I haven't actually heard that, and it's like blue is already great at the good thing, the fun thing. It's good at drawing cards. It's good at countering spells. It's good at bouncing. Like all the things blue does inherently powerful are already good. And so it's not like red and white as other color options that like classically have done not as good things like the aggro thing or something else. So Wizards has had to put a lot more work to like expand the cool things that it does with rules mechanics. And so blue has less of an expanded color pie than the other colors, just because it can always lean into old tropes that are always fun. I think that's fair. I think that's actually an interesting kind of concept in general, is that just because blue is already cool, it doesn't work as hard to be interesting. And like that might be a whole video to go over, but yeah, I really like that. I think the other thing is
because
sorry.
I just think to add to it, I mean, blue is my favorite color to play. Has always been, probably always will be. And it's because of the way that it plays. If you switch what I'm doing as a blue player in concept, like you make it sorcery speed primarily, I'm just like a lot less happy to play it. I may as well just play a different color. I can do that if I want. Like there's been tons and tons of things that are not as like interactive and reactive, right? Mm-hmm. Blue always has that. So if you want to change the flavor of a blue card, you have to take away the things that make it what it is. And the things that make blue what it is are the most unique in all of Magic. It is the best at drawing cards. It is the best at being instant speed. It's the best at countering things. And other colors don't get to do that. Other colors barely counter spells. There's like 5 or 6 cards ever, you know?
Right.
Like sometimes other colors draw cards, but nowhere near as well or as efficiently as blue. And so, yeah, I think that's probably the point.
Yeah, I think it, like what they did was interesting, right? Like blue red in this set is about big blue red spells. It's almost blue red if blue red had to ramp, which is why I think we've ended up with Storm and adjacent things around it, because it's a similar concept where when blue red is ramping, classically it ends up in Storm where it's doing it in rituals. But I like love, and we'll get into those as well, the like discard this card for a blue red hybrid, create a treasure. And then, or you get this like 8 mana spell that does insane things. I like love those cards as a mechanic. And I do think Quandrix, like the idea of having to do a lot of math, I think part of the problem with both of them from a Izzet perspective is that Izzet or Ravnica perspective, Izzet and Simic, all of those tribes were trying to just be the representation of these two colors together. And so they ended up chewing a lot of that space. And just some of them, the ones that feel the most different, got pigeonholed into specifics. Black-green was about graveyards. And so that's a very specific place. So black-green has other places it plays in that aren't that. And this one, it's life gain. Red-white was about being aggressive. And so this is the first time they've gotten a chance to be like, no, we're not the attacky red-white. We're the fact that red has a lot of looting and white has a lot of ways to get stuff back from the graveyard. So
I think if you look at, remember I asked you last week if you thought that there was still infinite design space, that Magic had like so many places to go. I think if you look at the trajectory of multicolor Magic cards dating back to like Invasion, because I think Legends was its own thing. But if you go to like Invasion, where they were trying to make like multicolor cards feel special and cool and like different, and you look at like that cycle of charms, the first cycle of charms, they're literally like the Darigaz charm is literally just like 3 different cards. You know, you could red, green, black, and it's like you get Lightning Bolt, you get Raise Dead, or I think it's Giant Growth probably. They just took cards and they stapled 3 of them together. It's the simplest design in the world. There's no creativity with that at all, other than just like, we're just going to make this thing we've never done before. So that's cool. As it evolves, as it grows, it changes. They continue to find ways to make it interesting. So you look at like the charms that came out of Ravnica or RTR, you know, those are interesting. You look at commands and 2-color commands and then how those things get introduced. And over time, what happens is all the easy design space that's just, we're going to take the flavor of 2 colors and just make like the lowest common denominator card because we haven't before, gets thrown away. And so you get to the point now where you realize that like there aren't that many ways to make things fresh or interesting. It's why we're seeing so many flip cards now, because that's fresh and interesting. They haven't done it before, so they're going to do that now. They're going to lean into it set after set. It's difficult to make efficiently costed spells in all 2-color combinations feel special and not just feel like repeats of old sets. That's a hard thing to do. That's a gigantic design challenge that I'm sure the team all looks at each other and is like, these just, like probably at different points in the design are just like, these just don't feel unique enough. They just feel like, it just kind of just feels like we're making Ravnica 3.
Sure. And that's I think why
or
they
Ravnica 4, I guess.
Made an issue to lean away from that. Right. And there was a cool article on how like we've had a few sets where allied color pairs are important. And this is the second time ever that enemy color sets have been a focus, and I think actually technically like the first, because all the other ones were like other color things were important in relationship to it. So that's something that's really cool. That's why like we got the commands and we got the dragons and we got all the things that we haven't got in the past. And let's talk about the dragons first in reference to modern. I think that 2 of these have a chance of seeing play, but really only 1 of them. But first, let's talk Shadrick Silverquill. I'm going to just go these in backwards. 3 white, black, legendary creature, Elder Dragon, 2/5, flying, double strike. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may choose 2. Each mode must target a different player. Target player creates a 2/1 white and black inkling creature token with flying. Target player draws a card and loses 1 life, or target player puts a +1/+1 counter on each creature they control. Quite
a bit of text on this card.
That's one thing that all of these cards do. Actually, I think I'm just going to talk about the dragons I want to talk about. This card's not going to see play in modern and is like a cool commander for politicking. But like the most interesting of these cards is Beladros Witherbloom. So let's talk about that, and then we can move on to just doing our set review.
Cool.
5 black green, 4/4 Elder Dragon flying, legendary creature. At the beginning of your each upkeep, create a 1/1 black and green plant creature token with, when this creature dies, you gain 1 life. A pest. But the second ability, pay 10 life, untap all lands you control, activate only once each turn.
Yeah, it's a super interesting card. I mean, if we're talking about for modern, I don't know like immediately where I imagine this card like winning the game necessarily. I think that there's...
You can have Necrotic Ooze in play and this in your graveyard, and then you can just activate this ability. I mean, 10 life is a lot of life, but Grizzly
You're right.
Brand...
That's what I was just gonna say. In modern, I mean, it's a powerful ability, and I think what's probably the most interesting about it is that it's pretty unique. There's not a lot of things that allow you to do that. So it probably works as part of some combo, where as long as you're above that life total, the ability to do this for no mana with the Necrotic Ooze, or whether it's like you know, a Reanimator type of thing, or I believe it's a sorcery ability, or no, you can do it.
No, you can do it.
No, so just once each turn. So like you know, like you could like Goryo's Vengeance kind of a thing. There's lots of stuff that.
Yeah, sorry, go.
Right. There's like interesting stuff that I think where you'll be able to do cool stuff. But like imagine that you Goryo's Vengeance this into play early in the game. You don't care about paying 10 life to untap 2 or 3 lands. You just spent 2 mana on Goryo's Vengeance.
Except like to me it makes sense more in the Grizzly brand decks, right, where you have the Green Shoal to gain 20 life in those situations, and this is another. Sure. You can discard him to Shoal because it's a green card to gain 7 life, which is the amount of life you need for Grizzlebrand to activate. So it's like another option there. But then this allows you like mid game, if you Goryo Vengeance on turn 3, to like loot a few more times or do a little bit more stuff on your turn. And the other thing that it allows you to do is if you can get it into play or a Necrotic Ooze combo is you always have the option to threaten the untap without using it. Right. So if you have counter magic up and if you have any type of interaction, your opponent can't has to make you do it, and then you can stop them, and you have that opportunity to try and stop them is also something that's powerful to me. So you can always like have counter magic up. Like the one of the things that's great about having untapped mana on your opponent's turn is you can counter spells, and this allows you to do that, but you don't have to pay the 10 life to do that. As soon as it's the opponent's turn, you can pay 10 life in response, and so they're always at risk of having their spell countered, which is cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely very cool. I still imagine this as being kind of a fringe card. I don't know where this. I can't really put this in a deck right off the bat that makes sense to me. Sure. But it does have a unique ability, so it's definitely worth us talking about. Cool. Yeah, move on.
All right, moving on. The Biblics Land, tap, add a colorless, 2 mana, tap it. Look at the top card of your library. If it is an instant or sorcery card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. If you don't put the card into your hand, you may put it into your graveyard. Activate only if you have exactly 0 or 7 cards in your hand. So this is the Library of Alexandria, a extremely powerful card throughout Magic's history. But instead of for free, you tap it if you have only 7 cards in hand. You may now pay 2 mana to do it if you have 7 cards in hand or 0, which definitely is an increase in power level, though it does cost 2 mana. But it only hits instants and sorceries. It does let you surveil. So instead of you look at this card and it goes back on top if it's not an instant sorcery, if it's a creature, you can put it into your graveyard. So there is some self-mill strategy. But it's a colorless land with another powerful ability. and a powerful ability that historically has been banned in formats and is really powerful.
Yeah, I think this card is it's another one of those opportunity cost lands that you look at where it's an untapped colorless source that might be good enough, but lands like this almost never end up breaking in. It's rare. Every once in a while one does. You watch something like Azcanta is a good example. Search for Azcanta that like turns into a land, and that had similar vibes to what you're getting out of this, but like that card is so much better for so many reasons than just being a land. There was a card like Seagate Wreckage, I think was the name of it, or something like that, back from like Gatewatch maybe, that I think was something similar. It wasn't this, but it was another, like, you can draw cards for mana and some function. The cards like this just almost never break through, I think is the point. So I don't expect it, but it's one of those ones that maybe if you wanted to get cute, it could be a one of if you had a deck that, you know, was really great at taking advantage of this.
So the reason I like this card more than Seagate Wreckage is like, this feels a lot like Loot House to me, right? And that's a card that's seen a ton of modern play. This can go in any color. You don't need blue-red. It's less expensive to activate it. It's worse because you're not just drawing a card, discarding a card, and yet you have the specific ramifications, but it's way better when you're behind, right? There has been a ton of games where I have Loot House in play and I'm in top deck mode, and I literally am just like, okay, I have to hold whatever card I draw to Loot House to try and get to something to dig for this answer. And in this, I can play that card and then use it to directly just draw a card every turn. And then in that situation, this is way powerful. And there's tons of decks I've played where it can get to that situation. That's where I like this card, is like in decks that were playing Loot House that could quickly get to the point where they were just like using it to dig late game to try and find answers. This does that, but then also can act as a surveil and is good on turn 3 when you need to tap it with your full hand, right? Like you're playing the counterspell game. What's really good about this card is like I can just turn 1, turn 2, keep counter magic open, and just every turn from that point on, I'm drawing 2 cards, and you having to deal with me having Cryptic Command mana open every turn is like a great position to be in, which is why I like this card. It's like it's a fair point. I think it's a fair point, and I think the thing about it that stands out to me in that regard is that because of the fact that this feels like a card that allows you to keep some hands that would seem like more mulligan hands, probably. Also, right? It's a card that if you see it in your opener, you're like, well, I have this and 2 lands. My hand's not the best, but like I'm going to be able to like hold open this one instant speed piece of interaction I have, and then start just like figuring out what's going on. You know, right. dig out of a bad mulligan. Like, so yeah, okay. You convince me. I like this card, the Biblics. I'll probably play this card in decks. It is notable that those decks that like to play the way you're talking about don't particularly like colorless lands. They often want like blue or like. Well, they want like blue-white, or they want... Yeah, that's true. I would replace a Field of the Dead with this card. I think, especially depending on the format, right? Like especially with Field of the Dead being banned, having Field of Ruin be this card instead, I think would work for me regularly. You can get the fact that it doesn't come into play untapped, right? Like it goes a long way, and you can play it as your 18th land, or not your 18th land, your 26th land, right? You can go up a land with this because it draws you cards. I think gets me a little bit over the edge. The next card is Test of Tales. 1 blue instant, counter target instant or sorcery spell. Search its controller's graveyard, hand, and library for any cards with the same name as that countered card and exile them. That player shuffles, then draws a card for each card exiled from their hand this way. So a negate that then, or not a negate, an instant and sorcery counter spell. Spell pierce-ish kind of, or actually that's not a creature. Yeah. Whatever. The spell is just instant. Yeah. Whatever that spell is. It counters an instant sorcery, but so that is limiting, right? You can't counter planeswalkers, can't counter creatures, but the fact that you then strip those cards from the game. So if you counter Zagorio's Vengeance or any Storm card, like against some combo decks, this is just you win the game if you get the right spell. If you have this against Adnaz, it's kind of game over. If you have, there's a bunch of decks that this gets the job done. Even just like in Infect playing this card and just countering their removal spell and stripping every other Lightning Bolt from their deck or every other Fatal Push from their deck is like puts them much farther ahead. Like the fact that I now have to get through half of your removal spells if I am able to counter your thing when you target my Infect creature puts me in a happy space. I'm a happy camper. I'll tell you something else too that stands out is that
Classically in Modern, there's a thing that happens where decks that want to be proactive with their game plan will play 3 or 4 copies of a premier removal spell in their main. Like you'll see it, like a deck will play 3 or 4 copies of Path, or a black deck will play 4 copies of Push or something like that, and that's their answer. Like that's the thing that deck has to not just lose to certain combo decks. So if you are playing one of these decks that like has a really vulnerable, very powerful creature, and you have this in your deck, and they try to path your very vulnerable creature, and you counter it and get rid of all the paths in their deck, you've just removed all their answers in a lot of cases to what you're doing, which I think that's actually a pretty cool thing. Test of Talents. You called it Test of Tails.
My bad.
Just for it's all good. Just for the people listening, it's called Test of Talents.
Yeah. Test of Talents. Yep. Sorry. I will not close windows that quickly. The next card, Plum the Forbidden. 1 black instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may sacrifice 1 or more creatures. When you do, copy the spell for each creature sacrificed this way. You draw a card and lose 1 life. And it's an instant, which is kind of a big deal. Up to this point, I believe me and Michael were talking about this earlier today. There's a 4 mana card that lets you do this, but it is a sorcery. And that lets you just sacrifice any amount of creatures and draw that many cards. The other thing that's cool about this is A, it's 2 mana. B, it's an instant, so you can respond to people's removal effects or board wipes. C, the fact that it copies itself to do it means that you are resistant to counter magic. So instead of like, I sacrifice all my creatures, you counter it, and now I've sacrificed all my creatures and I don't get the cards, and that's a huge blowout. This one, each of the effects gets copied, so they can't really counter it in a way that's profitable, which protects the fact that you just win all on this effect from that problem.
Yeah, I mean, so because the additional cost is to sacrifice the additional creatures, so I'm trying to think how that would work, because I'm imagining playing this alongside things that trigger off of sacrifice.
That works. Yeah. I mean, like any aristocratic type of situation, Mayhem Devil, every one of them will count toward. You've sacrificed all those creatures, so Mayhem Devil counts all of those triggers.
Yeah, this card's sweet. The fact that it's an instant's really cool. This is a really cool insurance card at its mana cost for black 1. You could even put this in. I could see putting this in some like there's a bunch of creature decks that I could see in Modern that they could play this card. If you told me that in game 2 in Humans they were like bringing this card in as like a 1 or a 2 of, I wouldn't be shocked.
Right.
Like that sounds like pretty sweet insurance. I spend my first 3 turns getting like 6 creatures on the board, and now my opponent's brought in some sort of wrath, some sort of like board wipe, even it's like a Terminus, whatever, and like you play that, and I leave my 2 open. And I like pay 6, draw 6. That seems great.
You don't pay 6. It's 1 and a black, sacrifice creatures, copy this spell. You don't have to pay per creature.
No, pay 6 life. That's what I was talking about.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said mana.
Pay 6, pay 6, draw 6. Yeah. I think this card's actually really sweet. I think this is one of the cooler scalable cards that I've seen printed in this vein, because you've got a lot of like 2 mana, sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards, or like there's a lot of things like that have happened over the years. Mm-hmm. But the fact that it's scalable and in multiple formats too. I think in Modern, I don't have a deck right offhand that comes to mind that is like super powerful with it, but I know there are plenty of creature decks in Modern that would be interested in using this. And I think this will find more and more interesting application over the years too.
The place I'm most excited by is like the deck list we were brewing when we did our preview episode, the Mage, because the thing that's cool about it is it also triggers Magecraft, right? That's why it's worded weirdly, is so you can in that Lingering Souls with Young Pyromancer and our preview card and Magecraft Mardu Pyromancer deck, playing this as like a way to sacrifice your Pyromancer tokens and then trigger Magecraft on your other card to go big, like sounds like just playing one of these in that deck, allows you to go off in such a cool way that like it adds almost a storm element to it. Yeah, I think this card's really cool. Any Magecraft card. I think any deck that's making creatures that uses Magecraft, this card's insane. And I think in Standard, there's even that green-black Magecraft card that makes a 1/1 token that gains you a life, that this card sounds insane with. And that, like, good enough to be a Modern player. Like, the fact that there's a green-black creature that whenever you Magecraft, you make a 1/1 token, and the fact that you can then play this card alongside that and almost storm off, because the life gained from the pest token, then you pays for the life lost, is like a really good play pattern.
Yeah, really sweet.
Next card, also from Witherbloom. This is one of the Deans. Valentin, Dean of the Vein, and Lisette, Dean of the Root. Valentin, which is the important one, is 1 black for a 1/1 legendary creature, vampire, warlock, menace, and lifelink. If a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. It has another ability, but that's the key phrase here. When you do,
go ahead.
When you do, you may pay 2. If you do, create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with create a pest token. Whenever this creature dies, you gain 1 life. Just to make our lives easier from a reading perspective. There are 5 mascots in this world. Each of them is a different token. Each one belongs to a college. Black green makes pests. They're 1/1s that when they die, you gain a life. Red white makes spirits that are 3/2s. Blue green makes constructs that are 0/0 and get X amount of +1/+1 counters on them, and that's how big they are. Black white makes a 2/1 fly or inkling, and then blue red makes a 4/4 elemental. It's just a big bulky 4/4. So those are the 5. I don't want to read off what those are every single time. So that's a elemental 4/4, spirit 3/2, 1/1 pest that gains you a life, a 0/0 construct, and a 2/1 inkling. So this makes a pest. And then the other ability on the backside is 2 green for 4/4. Pretty decent body, human druid. Whenever you gain life, you may pay 1. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Those creatures gain trample until end of turn.
The front side of this card is the important part. It's another card that I think is extremely good on the front side that does actually have upside on the backside that is pretty sweet. And I think the fact that this is a vampire is notable. I mean, just as a creature type, as a deck that's always like a fringe deck in Modern. That's like 5/0 dailies. People always talk about, when anytime they print an interesting new vampire. But yeah, I mean, the fact that this creature on its own is a 1/1 for 1 with menace and lifelink that is going to prevent your opponents from doing graveyardy stuff. And the ability to exile, you don't have to pay to exile. You can pay if you want the creatures, but you don't have to pay to exile. So it's doing the Dryad Militant thing, but for just creatures. Which is very, very strong.
It's like a really cool sideboard card out of Jund, right? Like it's a 1/1 creature that has lifelink and menace, so it does gain you value. Like you can gain life with it. It gets in for some damage. Anytime your opponent's creatures die, you get a 1/1 token. Like so that's a decent thing. And then the fact that it exiles it, it's like a mini. What's the 4-drop? Vampire guy that like saw
Kalidas. Yep.
It's a 1 mana 1/1 lifelink menace Kalidas, and like that card was playable, so I'm pretty into it. Really and then the back end, if like I'm in a matchup where I no longer care about the front end and I draw the 4-drop version, a 4/4 for 4 is like fine, and you will win games because you just like top decked into a creature that's a threat. And and then sometimes you'll its other ability where it pumps your whole pest army because you drew 2 of these is like really cool.
Yeah, I like this card. This card stood out to me.
Next card, Magma Opus. 6 blue and a red instant. Magma Opus deals 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets. Tap 2 target permanents. Create a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token. Draw 2 cards. Or, instead of spending 8 mana to do all of those things, that'll win you the game when you do it. Blue, red, discard Magma Opus. Create a treasure token.
Yeah, this card's great. This card is totally what I want to be doing. Like, this is my favorite type of card. The idea that this is an instant that is going to ramp you early in the game if you need it to, that's just what it does. Again, gets you to things that you need to get to. It's notable that treasures are artifacts also, just like your ability to create an artifact if you have any synergy like that.
Uncounterable too, right? It's an ability, so you can't. It's not most counter spells won't interact with it.
And then as far as like casting spells from your graveyard, any kind of effect like that, putting this into your graveyard, to get you to the bigger thing that's going to have the ability to do that. And then the front side of it is just like a sweet, ultimatum type of effect, right? 4 damage divided as you choose, any number of targets, choose 2 target permanents, they tap them. You got a 4/4.
Draw 2 cards.
There's just a lot. Yeah, this card just does a lot. I mean, it does cost 8, so I can't see a lot of situations in Modern you're casting this card, but it's an interesting card. At least that's cool, right?
Yeah.
It's just cool to talk about.
I think what's cool about this card is it is a card that on game plan will get you a treasure. For a treasure, you get a 8 mana instant in your graveyard, right? And that 8 mana instant is good. So like the worst case scenario, if you get in a top top deck war with Jund, and eventually you just draw this card and win the game because you were able to cast it, will happen once in a while. But the fact that there are cards that care about the size of spells in your graveyard, or allow you to cast cards in your graveyard for free, Mizzix Mastery, that's more now a historic thing because of all of the new spell mastery cards or whatever, the Mystical Archive cards. But like the ability to cast this from your graveyard, a big one to me is Torrential Gearhulk.
Yeah.
The fact that I can discard this, create a treasure token, and then in a blue-white control deck or a blue-red control or a Jeskai control deck, and then just have Torrential Gearhulk as part of my package, and on turn 6 at the end of my opponent's turn, flash that in and cast this spell.
Turn 5,
yeah,
because you're getting the treasure token. That's a really cool use for this card. Yeah, I think that's great.
And so like
I think that's really powerful.
That's the like, and Red's getting more and more effects where like ETB, you get to cast a spell for free from your graveyard or do damage equal to the converted mana cast of a spell that you exile with your graveyard or target, like, there's all of those effects too that the like just the red half of this is cool on in like a Gruul deck that's trying to take. So like over time, I think this card is really cool, and just on the front, there's already cool stuff to do with it.
There's also cool looping stuff of the idea of like things that return instants or sorceries from your graveyard to your hand. If you have some sort of like loop, end of turn, instant speed, like do this, return to your hand the next turn, anything. There's turn,
start ramping.
Yeah, you can sort of ramp into eventually casting it. I think that's cool too. So, yeah, I like this card.
Yep. The other thing is this mechanic in general is on 3 cards. We're only talking about this one. This is the best one. It just has the most text on it. But all 3 of them have that kind of consideration, especially if this type of deck, like the fact that you have the ability to have 12 cards that are just blue, red, make a treasure, put a giant spell into your graveyard, take advantage of it somehow, is a thing. Now, are there enough things right now that care about that? Maybe not. But in the long run, it's very possible that in 3 years, there'll be a set that's like, oh, they printed a great 2-drop that just like exiles things equal to stuff in your graveyard, and you can ramp it. Like it's such a cool mechanic. I do think this was at one point the Prismari mechanic. Like I think at one point each of the groups had a name mechanic, and I think this was it. And then they just removed it just 3 cards, because this feels like in like another set this would just be the name of, this would be artistry or like for sure. Like whatever art school. Learning to paint, the mechanic.
I agree.
The next card, which is one of the big ones, is Rip Apart, red and white. Sorcery, choose 1. Rip Apart deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker, or destroy target artifact or enchantment. So
it is a sorcery, but it is a sorcery, but it is a very interesting one. I mean, this is in the vein of like a Braid, cards like a Braid that have started to come along in the last few years, where it's clear that they want to make cards that have a lot of answers on them, so people in best of 1 games don't mind main decking them, and that's what this card is. And in Modern, this will be a sideboard card. In some situations, this will get main deck, depending on the metagame. But it's very similar to like the Wear Tear mold, where it's just like does a lot, Like Wear Tear is cheaper to get rid of one of them, right? Wear is 1 red and Tear is 2. Is that what it is?
Correct. So to get both, it's 3. What's nice about this is it's like, it's good to get Planeswalker. It's decent against Planeswalkers. It's good against creatures. It's great against artifacts, and it's great against enchantments. And in reality, this is a charm, right? You have 4 options. You have 3 damage to creature, 3 damage to. So like, I do think in that same spot, this just does a lot of different things, and is main deckable though, because it kills creatures. So like a Jeskai deck playing this in the same way that Jund decks play Assassin's Trophy or Abrupt Decay would be totally serviceable, especially if a format moves towards a path where there's more playable enchantments or artifacts in general. Yep. Next card, as it loads, Fracture. Speaking of removals, white-black instant, destroy target artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker.
That's a big one. This a big one, in my opinion. The idea that for 2 mana, now black-white has destroy target planeswalker just outright is like instant speed. It's really good. But the fact that, again, also this can hit an artifact or enchantment, black-white having that just as an ability in a black-white deck is fine. I mean, you can play like a Disenchant or something like that classically, back when they had that before it was switched over to Naturalize, but that is in Time Spiral. So for the sake of Modern, if you ever wanted that, you could just play that. This, though, obviously in your colors is going to be the same thing, but the fact that the added bonus of this card, they're like, hey, just replace your sideboard card with one that also can kill a planeswalker is pretty big time. That's pretty big time stuff.
Obviously, it doesn't hit creatures. That is a knock against it. And black-white as a color combo isn't the most common combination in Modern. But the fact that this just answers the other major threats of the format, hitting planeswalkers, which is like super relevant now pretty much across the board. It is still a sideboard card to me, but it's a really powerful one.
Sweet. Yeah, like this card.
Next card. I love the cards that are just quick and easy. We're both like, yeah, this is good. Expressive Iteration. Bluna red. Sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand. Put one of them at the bottom of your library and exile one of them. You may play the exiled card this turn.
Oh, that's really cool. Okay, so you've got a telling time style of effect, but it is also combining the red mechanic of you may play the exiled card this turn. That is very, very interesting, especially if this is a turn 3 situation. If you play this on turn 3, so what? Yeah, if you play this on turn 3. You exile the top 3. Presumably, one's going to be a land, right? So you get to play the land because you can play it. You may play the card this turn. So to get the land, you have to play it on a turn that you haven't played your land drop yet to be able to do it. Otherwise, it's. I guess you could ditch the land if you wanted to play it on like turn 2 or something like that. But it feels most effective probably to do it the other way. You just get rid of the worst card. You play the land from exile, and then you have the other card in your hand, which maybe is a 1-drop that you can cast with the land.
Yeah, for me, part of it is also on turn 6. It's scry 3, draw 2 cards. Right? In some ways, like because you'll look at the top 3, you'll draw one of them, and then the other one you can just cast that turn. It doesn't matter that it like is exiled. You can just play that card this turn. And then early game, it's a decent filtering card that lets you dig. On turn 3, you can use it to dig for lands if you need them. I think like just at every scale of the game, it's really powerful. It's slow and it's 2 mana, which does hurt its viability. Like I don't think it's better than Opt, but the fact that Opt just draws you a single card at the end of the game and you only get to look at one card, this lets you dig through 3 cards and you get to cast. You could cast 2 of them that turn, or you get to cast one of them and draw the other one for the next turn. Is a very interesting place for this card to be in. It's like it feels to me comparable, if not a little bit better than Is It Charm? Where like
it's got similar vibes to it. It being a sorcery definitely is a knock against it, I think. But
the like. So Is It Charm is famously the card that every blue-red deck puts in it as like a 2 of at the start of the blue-red deck existing. And then
cuts it at the end.
And then slowly over a few tournaments cuts it when it realizes which cards are actually good. Explosive Iteration feels like that, where it's like, this is going to be good because it's going to be digging. I would play this over Telling Time moving forward or any type of those 2 mana effects.
It depends on the deck, right? Often the decks that play Telling Time historically want to be able to play Telling Time as an instant at the end of turn. They want to hold open counter magic, and I think if you're playing sorcery speed stuff, there's going to be other stuff probably that has a similar effect to this, but I would agree. I like this card. I think this card is cool. Doubt it'll break into Modern, but it's possible. It's possible. I could see it at some point in a combo-y sort of deck.
In the meantime, while he's gone, make sure to check out our Patreon. We do these episodes get released there literally the next day as videos, and then audio by the end of the week, at least a week early. For the video, we like record on Tuesday. I guess the videos come out on Monday, so a few days, 5 days early, the week before, and then the audio shortly thereafter the video comes out. You also get bonus content, like we did a whole conversation day on the Winter Soldier and the new stuff that's going on there. Plus, we did a little bit of a conversation that'll be exclusive to patrons that was about Ben's just like writing music, and he just came out with a new song that there is a link below. We mentioned at the beginning of the episode, but check that out. We also are releasing that movie content now directly onto YouTube, so check those videos out. Also, Monday nights at 7:30, we do Commander streams. I believe that this video is coming out Monday, and therefore our guests tonight it's us. It's going to be the full playset. It'll be me, Marshall, Michael, Ben, all having brewed a deck or using one of the new commanders and as many of the new cards as we can add to our deck from this set from Strixhaven and as well as the Strixhaven Commander set. So that comes out. We'll be brewing a bunch of new cool stuff. I'm like really close to just playing Plarg, which is the red looting commander. So that'll be really fun. And so definitely tune in tonight for that. If you missed it, that lives on the YouTube channel every week forever. Last week we had Ellie of the Vale and Glenn Jones from Wizards of the Coast, original co-host of the MMcast. And we played a great game of Commander then as well. And now, last but not least, hit that like and that subscribe button. Otherwise, we can't, otherwise less people will see this. You have to hit the like button so more people see it so they can be cool like you. Ben is back, and we are going to talk about the next card, Storm Kiln Artist. 3 in a red, creature, dwarf, shaman. Storm Kiln Artist gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control. It does cost 4. Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, create a treasure token. So this is the better than make a mana for every spell and or thing you have. And you also get an artifact for every spell and or copy that you play.
It's a stormy card. It's a stormy-ish card. This card has lots of potential built in for this. We talked about it a little bit last week, I think, pretty briefly. But it definitely is quite powerful. It does cost 4. I think that's the only real restriction with this card. But we've seen enough times over the years that something costing 4 in a deck that wants to do some sort of stormy type of thing is not enough to kill it. You see that happen in Storm decks over the years, playing like Gifts Ungiven, or you've seen it happen in Storm decks over the years that have to rely on eventually casting like a Past in Flames or something like that. Those decks have been successful having things that cost 4 and 5. Paradoxical outcome, I think, in some of those stormy kind of decks. So I think it's fine. It is vulnerable, like you.
Yeah, it's a 2/2. Though it does dodge like Fatal Push without fetch lands or whatever it is. It is in a weird spot. I'm really excited about it in Jeskai Ascendancy-esque decks, and this doing a Jeskai Ascendancy imitation, right? Instead of every spell you cast untapping your things, you just get a treasure, but then that loops into the every cantrip you play loops into the next cantrip, and the treasures can help pay for that, and they work really well together. Is like a cool thing that this does and lets you dig to your Jeskai Ascendancy to go off with it. It also, I think, does work in kind of any type of anything that's trying to just play as many cantrips as possible. I think this has a really cool effect to it that can kind of do fun storm things with it. So that's one of the things I think is the coolest with it. Between Opt, Serum Visions, and I always forget the name of this card. 1 blue, mill 2, draw a card. Thought Scour. That's 12 cantrips in a deck, and you can like stretch to play some of the other weird ones, like the one that Ancestral Visions once you have 3 cards or 20 cards in your graveyard, or even Ancestral Recall, right? Or Visions. Ancestral Visions. I get, I'm never gonna get Ancestral Recall and Ancestral Visions straight. There's enough of those that this card and Jeskai Ascendancy just together, and those and some like creatures and the blue zombie that I have a bunch on my desk somewhere recently, that like can untap a land with Unearth. Like all those together is just like a deck, maybe by itself without like trying too hard. So yeah, I think there's just like it's a piece that allows Jeskai Ascendancy decks to be not as reliant on just that one card, is what's cool to me about it.
Yeah.
Oh, and Ad Nauseam decks. That's the other deck that I've seen people be really hyped for it on. Is because you can cast Ad Naz, and then he lets you generate the mana to cast the spells now that you've paid for your 5 mana thing. Now that Lightning Storm no longer works without Simian Spirit Guide. There we go.
Oh, right.
Which this is the card, right? Like this is a card that you can play that replaces Simian Spirit Guide, that allows you. It doesn't let you go off as fast, but it lets you play a similar game where, because you've drawn the right amount of spells, you'll be able to cast some free spells, maybe Shoals or whatever, to trigger him to then have the mana to cast the lightning, whatever, to be able to win. So that's the other place I've seen this talked about. It does add a 4 mana spell to your Ad Naz deck, but I don't think that deck cares because it's using like ways to get around the life loss anyways. So that's the other place that I think it's cool. Next card is Dina, Soul Steeper. Black green, 1/3. Dryad Druid. Say that 10 times fast. Dry Druid. Yeah, it's going to get hard. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. 1 mana, sacrifice another creature. Dina, Soul Steeper, gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the sacrificed creature's power. This is another creature that goes infinite with notice the other
Exquisite
one.
Blood.
It's Exquisite Blood.
It's the Exquisite Blood and Sanguine Bond are the classic
Yes.
the 5 mana black enchantments that they trigger off of each other.
Yeah. So Dina is another card in a long list of, or is another creature that goes infinite with Exquisite Bond. What's interesting is that we now have 2 creatures under 4 mana in like Collected Company range because we have Vito and Dina now. And both of them are relatively decent without that effect, right? Like this is a 2 mana 1/3. It blocks great. It pumps itself in a cool way, so you can create some amount of cards that you sacrifice to take advantage of it. Vito has a similar ability where it then can give everyone lifelink, and then which then triggers with these effects regardless. They work together really well. You can collect a company for them, and if you just play 2 Sanguine Bonds in the deck, sometimes you'll just win on turn 5. Just like accidentally in a Splinter Twin kind of way. I think like to me it feels very Splinter Twin having both of those cards play like Deceiver Exarch used to, and Pestermite, where you're playing just like generically good cards that you attack with. You play them early, they just do their own thing, and then they have to answer them. Otherwise, you play Exquisite Blood and you win.
Well, also, I mean, it's a green deck, so it's not turn 5. It's probably turn 4.
Right.
It's probably accelerated almost 100%. It's accelerated. You know, like you're probably playing an end of turn 3 Collected Company and winning on turn 4. That's more likely what would happen. And because it's a Collected Company deck that has the combos built into it, there's probably a bunch of other. There's probably a bunch of other like cool stuff like this. If you're gonna do this card, like. That deck is probably playing Kitchen Finks, right? Like it's maybe seems like it's totally good in the Collected Company, in the black green like value grind you out deck that just has a combo built in. Mm-hmm. You just lose if I get my combo. So that seems really powerful. I like that.
Yep. The question is this going to be better than Heliod combo, right? That's like the thing you're trying to compete against in this space. The difference here is no. The answer is no to that direct combo unless you're gaining advantages with other stuff that you're doing. And to be honest, or this just also plays Heliod combo as like a different angle of attack and something that doesn't that also requires them to have a different answer. Yeah. Next card is Rushed Rebirth. Black, green, instant. Choose target creature card. When that creature dies this turn, search your library for a creature card with lesser mana value, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So this allows you to...
Yeah, so what's notable about this card is that you can choose their creature because it's choose target creature, not target creature you control. So that's where this card gets really interesting. And I think it's pretty interesting unexplored design space too. I think it's kind of a cool thing that I haven't seen before.
And also you can just play it in a deck that can get Tasigur or the big fish into play. And then because of Delve, it lets you get any 7-drop in your deck or 6-drop in your deck and put it into play. So you can cheat Primeval Titans into play. It's like it's similar to it's like almost a more versatile version of Eldritch Evolution. Not Eldritch Evolution. Well, yeah, Eldritch Evolution, but what's the new
Neoform? Yeah.
Neoform. It's like a Neoform that you can use against other people's creatures and might just be better like not being as hard into the plan. Calling Ritual, 2 green black. Sorcery, destroy each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less, and then add a black or green for each permanent destroyed this way. So in some ways, this is a free board wipe.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, isn't it? Destroy each non-land permanent CMC 2 or less. Mm-hmm. In Modern, like this is going to take out, I mean, at 4 CMC, this is going to take out some notable stuff, and also allows you to get the extra mana that turn to do something else cool, which is I think what makes the card so interesting and like so unique. What's interesting about this card at Black Green 2 is that this is going to take out like a lot of like small creature decks. There's definitely some decks in Modern that this is going to have an effect against. I mean, there are those decks that are inspired by the historic ones that are playing like a bunch of 2 mana rocks, like stuff like that you're going to be able to get yourself a pretty significant advantage by getting rid of small creature decks, portions of humans, or merfolk. People don't play merfolk anymore, but like stuff like that, where you're going to be able to answer a lot of stuff that is overpowered for cheap CMCs. And I definitely think getting ahead with the colors is really important, with adding colors to your mana pool to be able to do something else. Like for instance, but the problem is the value decks that would play this, like Jund might play this, except Jund would kill half its things by doing this. Half of what Jund plays are cards So I wonder where this actually gets played.
Well,
the value decks have a lot of things that cost 2 or less.
Yeah, Jund has Tarmogoyf and it has Bob on occasion.
And it has Ren and 6.
And it has Ren and 6. But it also has Liliana. It also has Bloodbraid Elf. It also has other four cost spells. And it also, like, Croxa is a card it plays, but Croxa is a card that doesn't really care about this. Yeah, I mean, like, that's the deck that you think about playing it. I think this card is good enough. Like, if you look at the top played cards in the format, like, a lot of them are destroyed by this card pretty thoroughly. And it might be good enough to be worth, especially in a sideboard game, siding cards out for this. But also, I think just it might be worth just this being main deckable and you building your Jund deck or your Abzan deck to, like, take advantage of this card. Be it the small things you play gain value or you just lose them, right? Like you play more Dark Confidants Ren and 6s where they're gaining you value. And by the time you get to turn 5 and you need to cast this to kill all of their creatures, you're gaining enough mana that you can just, you've drawn enough cards that you can just rebuy the fact that your Bob and your Ren and 6 were killed. And it's actually the fact that Ren and 6 is legendary. So it lets you cast your second one. Yeah, I don't know. I agree that the decks that most want this right now, this has a pull-push relationship to what that deck is doing. But I also think that this is so good against some decks in the format. Having a free, ostensibly board wipe in Jund is, like, such a cool thing to now have to consideration for and have to consider for that, like, it makes you want to play more just like Liliana's and traverse, not traverse to Uvenwald. What's the clue?
Tireless Tracker.
Tireless Tracker, right? Like, play some more 3-drop threats just to, like, better play with Calling Ritual.
I mean, so Tracker makes clues, right? Which is cool.
Which do die from this, but then those clues are like that
turn into mana. It turns your clues into treasures.
Yeah,
which is kind of rad. So that's actually cool. The interaction between those two things is actually really awesome.
You can turn 1 Thoughtseize them, turn 2 Abrupt Decay them, turn 3 Tracker, turn 4 Fetch, play this. You lose both of your clues. They lose all of their things, and you have 2 mana to play Tarmogoyf.
I think it's really cool. I think that aspect of this card is really interesting.
The next card is Flame Scroll Celebrant, which on the backside is Revel in Silence, and it's 1 and a red for a 2/1. When an opponent activates an ability that isn't a mana ability, it deals 1 damage to that player. 1 and a red, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So it has super fire breathing. I think at one point they called what that is, but and then on the backside it has 1 white for an instant. Your opponents can't cast spells or activate Planeswalker loyalty abilities this turn. Exile Revel in Silence. Flavor text is sit down and listen, which I like. I think that's a really cool effect. The fact that it has a silence effect on the backside, which often is pretty, like, situational. And against some players, this is a backbreaking and this will win you the game. Against some players, it does nothing. But the fact that then the other side is like a very decent damage hate bear that also has fire breathing as a mana sink, this, like, does a lot of things all at once.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only question is what type of deck plays this, right? Because I think the answer to the question is that classically 2 mana red hate bear isn't good in Modern. Like, the only one that I can think of in red that has intended to be that way and actually is good is the enchantment one, the burn one. I'm just blanking on the name right now, but the red. Yeah. That's like the classic one. That all the rest of them, like, there's so many over the years they've tried in red that, like, never end up getting played. And then on the other side, there being a silence, it's a cool card for sure. And for a sort of a white-red tempo deck, actually, it's especially cool. Like, that's where I think that this plays in a space that red doesn't really have with white as its companion. This is not just, like, super aggro red-white. It feels like something a little bit more interesting in tempo you could do that I haven't seen as much before. But I still would say that mostly silence effects have not been played in Modern. Like, silence has seen some play in certain decks, but you already could have played Silence Scepter. That's already a thing that you could have done in Modern over the years, and that's never really been done.
Partially because Abrupt Decay exists, right? Like, Abrupt Decay hates on that card, that combo so hard. So the next card we're going to talk about will be Clever Clever Lumimancer, which we'll talk about. But the fact that there's that card plus there's Monastery Swiftspear, like that's a red-white tempo deck that like wants to play cool spells. I think there's like a real argument for a Jeskai Delver. Like I think Delver has been outclassed by cards now, but I think this in a Jeskai Delver like deck is great. The fact that this isn't a hate card that's purpose is to stop my opponent from doing anything. It's meant to just like make it so for them to do anything, their life total is just going to get worse and worse for my tempo cards. And then if I draw 2 of them, the Revel in Silence lets me just like on the turn that they could have stopped me, right? Like I have them, they're behind. I have them at 6 life because they fetched a few times. When they fetched, Flame Scroll Celebrant did 2 damage to them because they fetched. They like tried doing something else that they like activated a Planeswalker ability and that cost them a life. And I have the mana to pump Flame Scroll Celebrant, and I have a Monastery Swiftspear, and then I can just Revel and Silence them so that they can't do anything in the turn in between my next turn and this turn. Feels great. Feels like that does a lot to just win me the game.
I think that red-white tempo deck sounds like a tremendous amount of fun to play. That's the thing I'm the most excited about, is that actually sounds like it's right up my alley. So I think whether it's red-white or it's red-white-blue, I think that deck exists, and I'm all about it.
Yeah, it could be red-white-black, right? It could be using Thoughtseizes to get through. It could be
right.
It just depends on what the best tempo cards are, and what like one of the reasons I do like red-white-black. And let's get into the next card because it's about that. Is it triggers stuff on your turn? You want to trigger stuff on your turn, right? And that's what this deck wants because Clever Lumimancer.
Right, the blue stuff is counterintuitive there. Yeah.
Clever Lumimancer exists. This is the card when I asked Twitter what was the card they were most excited by for Modern, and this was the #1 pick by a wide margin. And this is Loam Line, but for spells.
Yeah.
1 white for a 0/1 Magecraft. When you cast it or copy an instant or sorcery spell, Clever Lumimancer gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So it can be a 4/5 on turn 2.
Yeah, I mean, there's also don't forget mutagenic growth, right? Like,
well, yeah,
like mutagenic growth in itself is that with this card, mutagenic growth is invigorate. It's right. It's
free invigorate. Yeah,
free. I get to pay 2 life +4/+4 my creature, which is pretty bonkers. And also, so it's a 0/1. Mm-hmm. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, it gets +2/+2. So there's plenty of easy turn 2 wins with this card, right?
With like storm cards there are, right? Like if you can gut shot with
so you play this on turn 1.
Yeah.
On turn 2, you cast what would be the best plus spell. Probably for 1 mana, the best thing you can do is like
you play Manamorphose first.
There you go. Yeah, okay. You play Manamorphose, but the point is you just played. It's not Double Cleave, right? It's Assault Strobe, the 1 red double strike spell.
Yeah. You play double strike
because if you play a mutagenic growth and a double cleave, that costs you 1 mana, and it's going to +8. +2/+2 for each of them.
It's +6.
But then
so
also you get
it's a 6/8 at that point. Double strike, 6/8 double strike. So then you
6/7 double strike, but you still have a mana left over. So then, right? So then you just with the other mana, whatever the best plus spell you can get for 1 mana is, it's better than Giant Growth, right? Like I'm trying to think what it would be just for
the
one.
The landfall one that gives +4/+4 is like
there you go. Groundswell. That's what I was trying to think. Yeah. Okay. So you groundswell. That gives you an extra 6 power on your double strike creature that you've now played 3 spells. So your 3 spells collectively, they're just dead on turn 2, like very easily just dead on turn 2.
If you're on the play on turn 2, this just kills them.
And you don't need you're playing 4 copies of mutagenic growth in the deck, so like you can also just this card's bananas.
You play like 4 Manamorphose and 4 mutagenic growth just because you can, and this card allows you to just take extreme advantage of those things. I think you even can play like you make it white. I guess you're Naya, right? So you don't play Snapcaster Mage. So yeah, but there's still like really cool stuff you do. You can also take advantage. It's also
I mean this is also a what's it called deck? It's very clearly a fetch land deck. So probably you are just playing not Loam Lion, Step Links with this card, is my guess.
You play Loam Lion. Loam Lion's better than Step Links. 2 mana is way worse than 1 mana.
No, you're mixing cards up. Step Links cost 1 white.
Oh, you're right. I'm mixing up cards. I was thinking of, Step Links, not Loam Lion. Sorry.
Step Links is the one you want. So yeah, you got a Step Links. And didn't they make a Step Links? Didn't they make a Step Links in red? Don't we have one now? Isn't there a red one and a white one? They're identical cards.
I believe there is one. Yeah, that's in standard right now.
So like you can, yeah, I mean that's so powerful in a fetch land deck. You like turn 1 because I'm trying to think. Okay, so this card gets +2/+2 every time you cast a spell. So it's gonna be way better than the other cards we just mentioned. You're not going to be able to turn 2 with like a Loam Lion probably.
I think you want this with you want it with Swift Spear more. You want it with Swift Spear, and you want it with what's the guy that was just banned in Vintage? I literally can look this up actually because I have that announcement now on my phone because we just looked this up.
Oh yeah, Dreadhorde Arcanist.
And you can play Dreadhorde Arcanist because all the cards you mentioned, Dreadhorde Arcanist can draw into and
That's
cast.
all of them.
And plus, if you plus Dreadhorde, you can get your better cards. I think that's the deck I would be more interested in looking to play with these cards than the fetch land ones, because those just aren't powerful enough because you can't kill someone on turn 2. You're right. This can kill someone on turn 2 with a reasonable hand. You have to draw this 2 lands and any other cards in your deck, and there are redundant versions of this that are quite not as good but good enough, like Swift Spear. Because Swift Spear
actually,
does that kill on turn 3.
Well, here's the thing, though. With the mutagenic growth version of the deck, with fetch lands and the Step Links package and Assault Strobe, you'd need. That's the thing. Is Assault Strobe would cost 1 red. You'd play 4 of them. I'm trying to remember if there was another 1 mana double strike.
I think there might be
card that does it. Because the thing is with the Step Links, turn 1 Step Links, turn 2 fetch land. So now you have 4 power out of your Step Links, right? You cast Double Cleave, so now you're going to be attacking for 8, and you can cast Groundswell, which is going to trigger because of your thing. So now you're actually attacking for 16, and if you have a mutagenic growth, you win. So Groundswell, mutagenic growth, fetch land. You also can just win on turn 2 as long as you have as long as you have what's it called, Assault Strobe. But I don't even think 1 mana double strike is a rare thing. They probably printed that more than once.
It's just Assault Strobe, but you do get stuff like Boros Charm.
I mean, to get the turn 2 win, you have to have Assault Strobe. That's the only way to do it. Yeah. But I just outlined a way to win with all 12 of your 1-drops that have to do with, your mutagenic growths are really important in the deck.
Sure.
But that's pretty interesting. Pretty cool.
And that's like the all-in version. I think there's like easily a like Grixis Death Shadow versus Double Strike, Jund Death Shadow transition where it goes much more into this is just like better than Delver of Secrets. It's doing what Delver of Secrets wish it could do. It
doesn't have evasion. It doesn't have evasion, so that's the one thing. But it is really powerful.
It's bigger and you have more explosivity towards it. I don't think you can play pure tempo, but I think this does really cool stuff. Yeah, this card is the one people are most excited. But your point of being able to just like outright kill a person on turn 2 without thinking about it is like on its face value just extraordinarily powerful.
It's so good.
and that is going to work on a high note. That is the last card for today's episode. This is the first part of part 2. Part 2 will be out next week. Let's do these set reviews all in one big videos. I think people really enjoy those. And let us know if you guys like that we're just doing all of them at once. I think that's really great. And we will be back next week with more content. Make sure before anything else to listen to Ben's song. He released it. There's a song he made. It's on the internet. It's doing really well. It's really great. Highly recommend it. Link below, at least to the YouTube, if not Spotify download. We'll put all the download things. Ben will eventually make a link tree. And then
I almost did that today.
And then we will check that out. Make sure to check out our Patreon. That's how we're able to make this happen. You get all this content a week early. This is going to go, literally I'm going to upload this to our patron as soon as I'm done recording versus you guys getting it in a week that are not our patrons. Thank you, patrons in general, for your support. Also, make sure to check out our Monday Night Commander stream. We do it every week. This week, we're doing a big thing, as I mentioned earlier, with Marshall and Michael. We're all brewing new commander decks around different commanders. I'm currently looking at Plarg, but there's so many cool ones that I might just audible and change my mind. Those then will live on the YouTube channel. For instance, last week's episode, if you missed it, was with Glenn Jones and Ellie of the Vale, where we did a really cool commander game where Aetherios and a bunch of cultists were involved. And so definitely check that out as well. Thank you so much, and please like and subscribe to make more content like this happen.